All right, rocking and rolling. Welcome, everyone. Please make sure you drop in where you are tuning in from. I always love to talk about the weather because we live in South Dakota and it is up, down. We never know.
Well, right now is when we get to brag to everyone else about how good our weather is, except for Jay. Aren't you in California? I'm trying to remember where you're at.
Yeah, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Super
Close,
close.
close.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's honestly, basically neighbors. I went to public school, so know any better, I you might actually believe me. Um, is it humid there? And boy, I hate talking about the weather. I just want you to stay so I can tell you how amazing it is here.
Yeah.
Super humid here.
Yeah, it is. It's humid in Virginia, Charlotte, everywhere here on the East Coast. Nothing is as great as South Dakota, from what I understand, and Black Hills specifically.
Boy, you know what? I knew you were a smart guy, but your IQ's off the charts. We know they couldn't measure it. They've got to design a system to get up to you. So you're so spot on.
Well,
Well,
welcome, everyone. We'll stop talking about the weather because you are more interested on reclaiming what's yours. That is why we're here today. And so thank you so much for Courtney, Jay, Ray for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen, so make sure to let me know if you do not see it. So again, we're going to start introductions, but during these introductions, I'm also going to launch a poll because I want to hear from you guys. This is going to be an engaging webinar. Yes, you're going to learn a lot about KPIs, fixing processes to fuel your profits. Courtney's here to share some operational perspective. And then Ray and Jay here will talk about what they're seeing in the industry, the challenges, and then what some actionable takeaways you will be able to take for your operations. So feel free, Courtney, let's let you go first.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. I am Courtney Parks. I'm located in Northern Virginia, right outside of our nation's capital, and I'm the principal broker and director of ops for Allegiance Property Management. We have around 265 doors, and I have a very small commercial division, single family homes, and yeah, just happy to be here. I've been in the business for a really long time and seen a lot of the changes and the shifts and technology, and hopefully I can offer some sort of perspective today.
Thanks, Courtney. Ray, Jay, you want to introduce yourselves? I don't know if everyone knows you, but I'm sure they do.
everybody knows Jay. I'll let him go and get him out of the way.
Well, thank you, Liz. I was waiting for you to tell one of us to go so that I just have clear instructions on what's expected of me. So just setting the stage on that right now. By the way, I love that you host and moderate these. It from a panelist perspective, it makes it so much easier. So thank you for doing all that. Yep, Jay Berube, co-founder of Better Who. We do direct hire global remote team members, and we have coaching and consulting services for property management specifically. Something about me is that I really love efficiency. Efficiency in every way, whether it's AI making your company more efficient, whether it's having the right people or the right processes in place that make your company more efficient. What I've come to find is that high efficiency equals high profitability, most cases, right? Unless you're just a complete train wreck. And that's exciting for me, being able to see those transformations in other companies. Ray, over to you.
Thank you, Jay. I also love efficiency, but I'll introduce and I'll probably give a little bit background as to why. So Ray Asman, CEO, co-founder of Property Meld, been doing maintenance operations for about 10 years on the software space. So I'm not an operator. Well, I am, but I'm not a property management operator. And but what I've gotten fortunate over the last 10 years is we're the largest property maintenance operations platform. I've gotten to talk to a lot of different customers. I've got to see a lot of different customers go through things. And they've been fortunate enough to kind of bring me along the way so we could build great product, which is great, but I also get to learn a lot of things around some of the more interesting challenges that our industry faces, i.e. some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. Just something a little bit about me, and I kind of joke about it, but I actually think today it's like really important. Um, I graduated with a 2.9 GPA. That's the important part, but it is important when you're weighing the opinions. But the thing that I was before, I was a mining engineer, and one of the things that I would do, I was kind of during that cohort after the last housing crisis. And so my job was to go and help get plants more profitable. And so everything that Jay's talking about, systematizing, automating, like finding where the leakage is, things like that. I was fortunate enough early in my career to get some really heavy exposure there. And I've gotten the opportunity to do a couple of plant turnarounds through that. So property management is oddly similar, but different in a lot of ways. Low margin, high risk, high process. So I think that's why I've really latched onto it over the years. So super excited to be here with Courtney and Jay to kind of talk about some of these things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Great to have all of you here. We just ended the poll, so thank you for taking the time to do that. Very interesting, kind of a 50-50. People are tracking, some aren't. But also there are a lot of people that are tracking, but they don't know what to do with them, what to do with the data. So this is perfect. So let's just get right into it. So quiz time. I know we're going to be talking about the current challenges that are happening in the industry when it comes to KPI tracking, billing issues, and where you can improve. So I'm going to launch a questionnaire for all of you. It's specifically around the maintenance KPIs. Those that are actually tracking KPIs, this is where you would go in and help us understand like what you are tracking. And if you don't know if you're tracking it, that's okay too. But while we work on that questionnaire, let's start digging into the actual leakage, the core challenges and data and operational horror stories. Let's talk about the horror stories. So Courtney, I would love to hear what's a common thing that you're seeing when it comes to billing issues and leaking profit through these practices.
Mm. I have a lot of horror stories, some not safe for work. Tell you guys after. But I think the biggest thing with maintenance, and so for my company, we're pretty traditional. We don't have in-house maintenance because we're a mid-sized boutique company, a lot of accidental landlords. We solely, function with third-party vendors. And, one of the, I think, biggest hurdles early on in maintenance for my company was everyone's hands were in the pot, right? There was like no systematizing or no like org chart for I'm doing this. So like if everyone's doing it, then really no one's doing it. And that was one of the early hurdles in my career. I recently spoke at Southern States, and if you were there, you heard my fun story about how I replaced the wrong roof. Long story short, I literally, hired a company and they put a roof on the wrong property. And so talk about horror stories. It's the inability, when everyone's doing it and then no one's doing it and there's zero follow-up, and everyone's big question was like, but how did that roof get on the wrong house? And it's because there was no structure. So that's where you leak money and you're becoming inefficient. So for me, actually figuring out how to better organize my company and create a maintenance department, even though we don't have in-house maintenance, was a huge turning point in being able to give maintenance the love that it needed, because that's where, 90% of our pain points come from.
I think what's interesting kind of about like the billing thing too, and Courtney, I'm curious on your take on it, is it's almost like all the hard stuff is like the hard stuff. With everything from the beginning, like actually changing out the roof is kind of honestly the hard stuff, like maybe which one. But I find what's really interesting is like you can lose all the hard work or systemically lose the hard work, like if the billing's not done right. And so if you your coordinator spending time doing it, it's almost like it's 90% there, but that 10% can literally cost you the 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you think of just the mundane details of like the worst thing you want is for your client to be emailing you for an update versus you updating them. That tells me that it's already taking too long, that the client doesn't know that the work has been scheduled. Or so I think like the great thing about Property Meld is it builds in the ability to provide those touch points while the process is going along. But yeah, it you do all the hard work, you actually get the job done, but then the client doesn't know what you're doing behind the scenes. So really you're doing zero work to them and and you have no value at that point.
I'll even just jump in. I'm curious, Jay, on kind of your take here, but I was literally on a customer that actually ran a really great maintenance operation, and they almost did nothing but fix the billing process, and it turned it from a pretty negative multi hundreds of thousands of dollars lost business to profitable, even without changing like any operational stuff. Which was like pretty mind blowing for me that that last section can actually do that much damage if like not done well. And I'm curious, Jay, if you've got any sort of feedback or sentiment on seeing that with your clients. I know you've ran a PM company as well before.
Yeah, we work with a lot of folks that when they first start with us, doesn't a lot of companies are under monetized, first of all. So, meaning that you should be charging more. But even the ones that do have the right, what we feel the right fee structure in place, well, you're only keeping what you're actually collecting. So, if you're not collecting on, if you're missing billing opportunities, whether it's maintenance related or not maintenance related, then, you know, it doesn't really matter if you have the right fee structure in place. And number one reason why that happens is because people don't have the right system in place. Companies don't have the system in place, or they don't have accountability measures in place. Um, I think of your operations, I think of this as an engine, right? So, you've got a race car, and in Charlotte, we have NASCAR. I don't know what they have in California, but in Charlotte, um, in Charlotte, we have NASCAR. So I think of engines, and in engines, it all starts with the best car, the one that's going to win, are the one that has the strongest pit crew, right? And on that pit crew, right, who's on your team? Well, they have to know when they're servicing that engine, if how much oil they need to put in, and when. What are the procedures that they need to follow? What does success look like? That there should be a measure of how quickly they get that car off the blocks and back around the circle. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of missed billing opportunities that we see, maintenance and non-maintenance related.
And I think the pit crew thing is what's really interesting is they do the exact same thing every single time. I think that's also one of the things that's like interesting about process breakdowns is like, and you'd mentioned the term like accountability, which is interesting. And then you mentioned the term measurement, like how do you measure that, right? If you've got, a remote team member, say you get them from Better Who, and it's like, well, what's our process and what's the playbook you're running that you have to do every time? There's a quote that I use personally in the company, and like the least you're willing to accept is the most you can expect. And it's like if billing isn't that important and we tolerate it not being that important, we tolerate poor billing practices, then most likely that's going to be pervasive in the business. I'm curious from either, Courtney or Jay, do you feel like where are people losing the most money? Is it the actual process of billing? Like I'm getting maintenance done and how to make sure that I don't have those horror stories of like, oh, I got an invoice 3 months later. I heard one customer does multifamily that like had a bunch of HVAC stuff that was like $100,000 on a property and go, oh, forgot. Sorry. And even worse, if you don't have management of that owner anymore, or is it more related to just not pricing, not billing, like just choosing not to charge for things? Like if you guys were to stack rank that, I'm curious your thoughts.
I think poor billing it's not going to necessarily, it's not a direct correlation, but it's like a symptom of an underlying problem. And it's going to be a reflection of how well your company is operating as a
Mm,
whole. Like how strong is your vendor network? We used to have a vendor that notoriously would bill 6 months behind, and then or he would hit you with the, I forgot to bill you for this. I put this in a year ago. And part of that is on your team for not checking the list, but part of that is, we need to get rid of this vendor. We need to improve it. But then you're going back to your client and saying, we had this work done and you actually didn't pay for it yet. So it has to do with like a bigger picture, and it's like this symbiotic relationship of like one problem over here, like a leak over here is going to constitute, you know, a bigger issue down the road, and it could be completely related to a different department in your company.
mm,
And I think the other thing with property management is we're really trying to get towards this asset management and create more value for our clients. I think we've been used to doing stuff for a long time that we weren't charging for, like filing insurance claims or handling a turnover. And that's one of the struggles as a, middle of the road operator, where clients kind of think that you should be doing this for your, management fee that you're charging. And then you get someone like a Jay from Better Who Consulting come in and say, no, you should be, this is like a profit stream for you. You should be charging for this. And you're creating value by handling this massive undertaking.
Jay, curious on your thoughts. By the way, I love the quote, Courtney. One that I latched onto is poor billing is also a symptom of other process problems, which I thought was really where there's smoke, there's fire, and billing is like a great way that there isn't. There's multiple people who care. The vendor cares that they get paid. The owner cares. You care because this is the money part, right? And so somebody will eventually care. It's like
It's
one of those
not
things.
just one, you can't place blame in one thing, but it's going to be a trickle down effect.
100%. Jay, what was your take on that? Just come back. Like, what's the bigger issue you think? Is it is it those process symptoms of the owner that they get the bill over, or like, do you think like larger is if you were to stack rank would be on the like not charging for things, is kind of like Courtney was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, going back to something you said about what you're willing to accept, I wrote down company culture, and I think it really is all stemming from company culture. What are you willing to accept as a leader in your company when it comes to the performance of of team members? What you want out of the company? Are you charging what you're worth? Um, every single layer, I think, comes from company culture. What do you want your company to look like? Um, where I see uh, most loss profit where I see most deficiencies on profit, it comes to efficiency. Efficiency with the people. So, does your team know what they're supposed to be doing? Do they know when they're supposed to be doing it? How do you guys track that? Do you have a scoreboard in place? Where do they pull the numbers from? Is there clarity on what they should be doing? So I think it all really just boils down to your team, your who, and what you're willing to accept.
I'd like to make a point on one thing I wasn't planning on. We have a great customer, and hopefully, better not say the name, but it's a good thing about them. So it's very rare you get an A/B test because usually companies don't operate two different ways. This particular company actually operates two different ways. They have one where they charge for maintenance and one part of the company that they don't. And they've actually quantifiably increased renewal rate by 11 points, like for like. And they're in the same market, same whatever. And their costs are the same. The resident stat is like 12% higher. And like, there is a case to be made where, do you want to under resource maintenance? Because that's basically what a property manager has to do in order to meet some of the no charging things. Like I can't afford to put another maintenance coordinator. I can't afford to put a vendor manager on there. I can't afford to go get multiple estimates. I can't afford to follow the resident. So there is like a weird thing that's part of that. And I remember one thing, and I apologize if this is kind of going off topic. I remember reading a book all the time, like which business is going to make more money? Is the one who was charging $1 for their widget, is the one who charged 75 cents for the widget? Let's assume it costs 50 cents for the widget. And the natural thing is macroeconomics. Well, if I've got a lower price, my demand's higher. And or you can actually increase your awareness. You can increase your service quality. You can actually spend more than the other person, and still make a profit and deliver something else and better service, more awareness, all that sort of stuff. And so I've always been a fan of finding ways. If you're adding value, we can make a case for it's good. I will show one thing secondarily, Jay, what you said of like, what's the scoreboard? I think that's one of the things we're finding in billing right now, especially in like price sensitivity. Like investors are like, no surprises. I don't get any surprises. Nobody gives me a surprise. I might have tolerated it because now I'm like getting 8% annual rent increases, and this is great. And I am printing money, and everybody's staying, and I've got that unit leased up before anybody even leaves. And now it's different. And so that tolerance is left. We have a customer that I watched, interesting. It's percentage of invoices received in less than 4 days, which I thought was a really interesting one. So I've been so heavy set, right? I'm like, how do you move NOI through operations? But it's like this back end part is like starting to become incredibly important, even from vendors, which coordinate that. It always blew my mind, that story you tell vendors, like, I don't want to get paid. Like, what is wrong with you, dude? Like, why? But it's actually more common than not. But it's like, it's part of the team's job to get the percentage of invoices, in 4 days. And I think they were targeting 80%. If I remember. And anyways, I found that fascinating. They were processizing KPI over on the right side.
Okay. Thanks for that. So I know we're going to be talking more about this financial scoreboard. So I just want to kind of dig into Better Who has their 4-pillar model. Would love to chat a little bit about that as well. And then dig into what's perfection. And I know when we're talking about the financial scoreboard, that's where KPIs come in and the metrics. And so, Jay, if you can share a little bit about the 4-pillar model that Better uses, we can kind of dig into how do we diagnose this profit loss.
Yeah. So specifically in property management, but just overall, this is our view in business, right? Is that we have these 4 pillars that we have to have intentionality on, and they go in a certain order, right? We have to fix or we have to optimize these 4 pillars in a certain order. So, what do most property managers say when you ask them what they want to work on in their business? They'll give you a door growth goal. I want to add X amount of doors, or I want to be at X amount of doors. So we typically try to jump to what we think is sexy, or what we think is going to determine our profitability and our longevity in business. But growth should be the last thing. You have to first dial in, and you have to start with your team. And having a strong team in place is the absolute foundation. I'm sure everyone on this call can agree. If you don't have people that buy into how you do business, how you want your customers to be treated, if you don't have a team who has what we sometimes call a strong give a shit factor, right? It's the intention. It's like I say to my son, I was just talking to him about an oopsie that he had. And I said, well, what was your intention? Was your intention positive? Were you trying to do the right thing? So if you have a team that has strong intention, a team that is capable, if you have the right people in the right seats, then you can move to systems, right? You can work on your systems, and your systems should be, of course, documented. So not just your your policies, your SOPs, and your processes. Um, and most companies do not have this, and that's okay, right? Like, but you have to start somewhere. So working on your systems and how you do business, having that engine in place, right? That's what your team's going to help you build. And then once you have that, then you dial in on your profitability, you dial in on your numbers, and make sure that you are monetized correctly. And then once you are monetized correctly and you can focus on growth, this is the perfect storm, because at this stage, if you're doing it right and you're building leaders, that you have the layers of accountability in your company, you have a good org chart, you have a scoreboard where you're measuring your KPIs and you're actually doing something about it. So you need the right type of meeting cadence. We ask companies, this is becoming less common now, since we have a lot more companies who are adopting remote teams. But you still ask companies, do you have regularly scheduled meeting cadences in place, right? Do you have a daily huddle? Do you have a weekly leadership meeting? Oh no, I see Jane every day and we talk. And I'm like, not water cooler talk, but we're talking about meeting with intentionality, having structure in place. And once you have these elements in place, now you're a business owner. You can work on the business. You can spend 80% of your time working on the business or not working at all, and just focusing that 20% in your business. That's the ultimate goal. That's the 4-pillar model.
By the way, I love this, Jay. Can I show you something? I don't know if I've got the ability to screen share. Do I have the ability to screen share, Liz?
I think you can
Oh,
request
I
it, but
do. Oh, okay. Well, this is dangerous.
I think he just
So what's awesome about what you said, by the way, and I'll just tell you, this is like here, and I know we got to talk about billing, because billing is a more important process now, and I think there's highly sensitivity to it. Jay, the thing that you had that was like a little bit different, which is like the next level that I loved, was this concept of like profit and then growth. It's like, what does the business need to do? You could grow and then become profit. That means you're just going to lose money much faster as you're growing. So I love that process. I think it's crazy because I have almost identical thought process to how to think about it. The only thing I would say is like the culture you talked about, how your people play with it. Do you have the right people? Do they have the right process? And then are you training against that process? And so it's like, it's built from the ground up, but you almost diagnose it from the top down. So like, are we doing the right training? And admittedly, I think we need to augment it a little bit to like include measurement. Are we measuring the right thing? In terms of like how we define billing success. And like, you've got to have that, because maybe if you pick the wrong thing in measurements, you could process for something else, or like somebody's happiness. Like, we really care about the employee's delight. It's like, that's great, but what happens if I'm stuck with a $20,000 bill and somebody's got to pay for it? And employee delight maybe matters a little bit less if that's going to happen a lot. And so how do we kind of think through it? But anyways, I just wanted to say, I loved how you're thinking about that, Jay, and your profit and growth afterwards as part. So I'm curious, like, how does that look for billing and billing process? How do you not become the company that does such an exceptional job in operations and like basically lose your tail trying to just make sure you get the monies after all the hard work?
Well, I'm gonna take a step back and just give a quick, because I've been working with Jay for about 18 months now, and it's funny, I don't think we ever like looked at big picture for the 4 pillars. We just kind of like dove in and started working. But I can tell you, when you work on the first three, growth, well, if you work on the first two, it's kind of like if you look at your company like an organism or like a body, like let's look at the first two as like eating better and like getting a good night's sleep, then you're going to like feel better at the end. So it's for us, we tackled, the right people, right seats, documenting our processes. And without even trying to work on profitability, we became more profitable just by fixing those first two things. We went from around $200 of revenue per door under management, and now we're at 270 in 18 months. And I can tell you, we have not worked on scaling or growing, and that's just from, figuring out um, the internal struggles of like who's doing what, how do you measure success, coming up with job descriptions, literally finding out every task that your company is doing on a day-to-day basis and making sure that task has an owner who's going to own the outcome. And how do they know they're doing well? How do I know that they're doing well? And so it's kind of funny like hearing that full circle now, Jay, you like going over all of those and I'm like, "Oh yeah, we did that, didn't we?" And it's not rocket science and it works.
Yeah.
Mm.
And to call attention to something you mentioned um, that is what we call the responsibilities matrix. It's being extremely granular with everything that gets done in your company because and you had said if no one owns it then it doesn't get done, or if everyone owns it it's a shit show, something like that. My words are not yours. But having a responsibilities matrix is absolutely necessary if people are going to know what they're responsible for. And we say right people, right seats. Well, looking at your team, they have to work within their superpower, which is where passion meets talent. So just because somebody really loves to do something, if they're not good at it, then they shouldn't be doing it. It shouldn't be their role. And vice versa. If they're really good at it, but they're not passionate about it, they shouldn't be doing that either. We should have people that are doing what's within their superpower, which is going to provide them the best. And guess what? And there's people out there that their superpower is collecting money, right? It's billing properly. It's seeing profitability go up. So, whoever is in charge of billing or whatever role that looks like in your company, is that person passionate and talented at that aspect?
And I think going back to Ray, your question, if you have that responsibility matrix and you have your organizational chart and you start finding, it's really easy to figure out where the leak is in your boat, right? Like where, if we're having a billing issue, is that because my maintenance coordinator isn't tracking the meld and getting it closed in a timely amount? Are we dealing with a bad vendor? Or is it a billing issue and, my accounts manager needs to be more on top of something? Or is it a client issue? We've all had those nightmare clients where you're waiting on funds and they're like, well, I'll put a check in the mail or I'll make a contribution. So I think you might not necessarily know what's causing your billing issue or how to make it more efficient without having a clear roadmap of who's doing what and where the problem lies.
So where do you all tend to see, by the way, like this responsibility lie? Because I think historically it's been a little bit co-own, no own, right? Because you have accounting, whoever's handling the accounting is like, I'm just processing the money. I don't know what's been done in maintenance. The maintenance people sitting there going, well, I got the job done. And like kind of could exist in the gray or the ether. So what are you all seeing in terms of who really starts to own this in the responsibility matrix? Or is there a defined one? Or are we all still figuring it out?
I'm still figuring everything out, Ray, like on a daily basis.
Well, we all are, but
and my favorite thing is how many of you out there watching, your owner has contributed money to the account and then it goes right back to them, because that happens too, right? They've funded their account for like a big expense and then the bill doesn't get processed in time and you didn't know to hold. And so the accounts manager, I mean, there's just so many things that can go awry. And at the end of the day, it just makes us look bad. It's like, get it together. Yeah, created a process for holding funds. It is a must. And we did the same thing too. It was like, okay, we need to factor this into our weekly meetings or monthly meetings before the rent disbursements go out. I need my maintenance coordinator and my accounts manager to get together and go through a list of, you know, this person has a turn coming up and we need to hold money, or this person has a roof that's going to go on. Correct roof, not the wrong one. But yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a little bit of both, and that's where holding those weekly leadership meetings really come into play, because you can sync if you look at your company from like a departmental, um, you know, style, you've got your maintenance, your leasing, and your accounting. You need everybody to come together in order to be on the same page for that. So sometimes you might have a co-owner of that outcome in order to have true success.
So in that, I'm guessing it sounds like, Courtney, it's almost like there's a co-owner of the process, but maybe there's an individual owner of each one. Maybe accounting's job is to make sure that billing process, the owner holding funds, like I tell them, like they did it, they have to have an answer of where that thing is, right? Like I've got the owner money, I'm about to do disbursements, I'm about to do whatever. I need to know. Whereas the maintenance coordinator, be like, your job is to get the invoice. You're the one with the relationship with the vendor. You're the one who can do the phone call. Hey, where are you at, Bill? Like I've been asking it for a while. And so maybe we're kind of like taking too much of the process and saying this is one person's job, and saying, what do you own in this? The
Yeah,
responsibility matrix, if you guys
right. In my mind, the maintenance coordinators should be, running the ball all the way to the end zone, right? And so, they're clicking approve in Appfolio or whatever management software you're using. That bill is posted, it's ready to pay, and then it transitions to accounting. And they're the one that need to, they're making sure that bill gets paid at that point. And if they don't have the money, then they're connecting back with the team to figure out, what's the plan.
And I think love that break, by the way, because there's a couple of things. One, there's almost like operational billing, and then there's like like accounting billing. And so one of the things we've seen a lot more is like maintenance coordinators are absolutely responsible for the billing and some of those metrics. We started to do some KPIs, even in insights, of like percentage of mouths attached. So you can actually go to your individual vendors and look at which ones are given to you and what time. And then also some automation around pinging them, because it's kind of like you can't sit there and have a maintenance coordinator like almost look for the thing they don't. They've got to find ways to exceptions. And so yeah, that's super interesting how maybe should be split. Another thing I've seen is super weird, by the way, is you have maintenance coordinators trying to bill as much as humanly possible in accounting, writing things down because they don't want to piss off the investor. Like I've seen it to where technicians, they're billing for copious amounts of time. And the accountant's like, well, how much do we want to lose this investor? Because towel bars don't cost $300. And so anyways, I've seen that interesting dynamic as well. Jay, what's kind of your thoughts on some, co-own, no own, who owns what? What have you guys seen? What do you guys suggest there down in?
It's definitely different for every company. Everybody, I mean, depending on what state you're in, depending on who your client is, right? Whether it's into institutional investors, absentee landlords, there's just so many different variables, how your company is set up. But the bottom line is there has to be clarity. That's the commonality. There has to be clarity on what does success look like and who's responsible for that success, right? And that's really the foundational piece. And most people don't know the answers to those two questions. And that's scary. But once you do, the good news is you can start figuring it out and have a clearer path to profitability.
Well, and by way of mapping out your processes and your systems, it's going to create an environment where you're asking those questions. And we still have them daily. We use Lead Simple, and we have, it's kind of like this, ever changing, like, hey, this comes before this step, and I think it should go after. And that's kind of, you need to be asking those questions and being open to, so the question of who does what, you're not going to figure it out unless you're actually like writing out or mapping out from start to end. How do I get from the meld comes in to the vendor gets paid, and what happens in between, and then who does what? And that's, it's time consuming, but it's so worth it because you do it once, and then it's everyone has kind of more clarity at the end of the day.
Yep.
Perfect. So let's start talking more about like the actual financial scoreboard. So I know we're talking about processes and people, and so that's super important, but what should they be tracking? How do they know what to track? Because I mean, I've heard that a lot, like, oh, here are all these maintenance KPIs or just property management KPIs you should be watching, but what do you do with that data? So would love for any of you to jump in and try to help our viewers understand, like, what should they be tracking in maintenance specifically, and where can they catch that leakage?
I can suck all the oxygen out of the room, so I will not. Courtney or Jay, you guys want to lead it off?
Oh, I was going to throw it to you, Ray.
Yeah.
I can tell you what we look at, and I will preface this by saying KPIs to me were very intimidating, and for a long time I ignored them because I didn't want to know, because it's like it's almost like weighing yourself. Like I'd rather not know, in case it's bad. But so on the maintenance side of thing, we look at, and Meld is great for this, especially if you have the insights. We look at like median speed of repair. Ours is around 11 days. I'd love for that to be less, but there's so many factors that go into that. So I try not to beat myself up over it. We look at resident satisfaction, because that's going to translate to lease renewals for me. That's going to translate to residents swallowing an increase a little bit easier. If they're happy, they're not going to push back as much. We might look at total spend per unit. I would also say if you are in the NARPM world, you're going to see these benchmark studies. I don't really pay attention to that too much. I track against myself, because at the end of the day, it's a little more important for me to look at my own improvement. It's like, am I moving the ball from where I was 60 days ago or 90 days ago? So I think in terms of KPIs, I would just start with a few. Um, Assign each person an KPI and owner, like make sure it's not you tracking everything, make them reportable, and then figure out how you're going to make them actionable. So like, don't just track something because you think you're supposed to track it.
I think that's a great one. I think one thing that's interesting about this, I love all the KPIs here, but kind of as we were talking earlier in the call, there's the collecting part and making sure you're getting your services and the payment of services right. So like, even as you're looking at tech utilization rate, that could be, I've seen plenty of operators that are not billing for all the hours their technicians are working, copious amounts of it, right? So it's like a big issue. And then you've got, even speed of repair, Courtney, like you're talking about, like if there's some really long repairs that are getting stuck out there, the reality is that's risk on the investor being gone and some of these other things. So you can almost bucketize some of these by which one's creating risk for me that I need to fixture and monitor. And there's almost like which one is, making sure I'm ensuring I'm monetized as well, you could feasibly do.
Yeah, one thing that has been interesting for me is we've really focused on our turns and how quickly. So I ran numbers for Q2. I'm just kind of curious on, because obviously vacant properties means less money for me, less money for my owner, more risk. A property is way better off if it's occupied. And we're looking at like a 10-day, 11-day turn rate on average, which was like amazing. And I think it's, because of that, I was able to look at how did I get to that number. And with my org chart, we created a director of maintenance and turnover position. So literally, I have one person, my boots on the ground in Virginia, who her job is to make these turns happen. And then we have our remote team member who's our maintenance coordinator to assist her. And so for me, I'm looking at profitability and my revenue per unit is going up because our turns are being handled so well. And that was huge. So I think you could also just pick one number and kind of focus on it and see how you can make the number budge on just that one. And it's super interesting.
We did oh, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's a good point, Courtney. And what comes to my mind is that if most companies aren't properly tracking KPIs on a consistent basis and making decisions from them, right? We want to make data-driven decisions, but if we're not collecting the right data, then we're not going to make the right decisions. And if we don't have intention around how we review the numbers that we have in front of us and how we make decisions from them, we won't make decisions from them. So the easiest way to get started, if you aren't, whether you have KPIs in place or not, if you're not using them, it's not going to matter, but have one or two that you focus on and you track, and do that for the first 90 days. That'll be a great start to consistently tracking what matters in your business, because like Courtney said, the time it takes to do a make ready is going to affect everything else in your business. It indirectly affects your profitability and your investor retention.
I think one of the things too that is, I think you talk about it, Jay, pretty regularly. When I've kind of heard you talk about it, it's like some of these things and what they can do to protect even the relationship with the investors. There's probably some of these things that you could in your gut know, I'm losing money or I'm losing investors, and that might give some inklings. I think Courtney, you were talking about picking one or whatever, writing something down here in the moment. But it's basically your gut probably is pointing you generally in the right direction. Like, I'm losing investors, then maybe it's my cost management, maybe it's my surprise costs. How do I do that? Or if it's my profitability, maybe it's one of these other metrics that you sit there and go, hey, I'm going to just pay attention to this the next 90 days. Can I even measure it? I know for us at Property Meld, we're super data driven, but there are plenty of times we sit there and go, let's define success. And we suggest a metric that we yet do not know how to capture. And then we'll run an entire quarter and go, how did we do against that big? Well, we think good, but I don't really know because we never had the measurement really fully flushed out. We didn't invest the time on tracking it. And so, in agreement with this, but just some starting point, make sure that I like that thing of the measurement first one, but it's also make sure you actually have the thing to also measure it as well.
Well,
Yeah,
nowadays, just a quick, we have all these reports and you have Chat GPT. It's so easy nowadays to have it analyze the data for you. So I feel like previously it might have been like, I don't have time for that. And there's really no excuse now with all of these tools that are out there to get a quick number.
Courtney, my heart grows 10 times the size when you start talking about AI and the fact that you and your company are an AI first company, making decisions and using AI in different ways, making it part of your culture. So thank you.
No, I mean, I really feel like when it comes to AI, just everyone's talking about it, but like, how do you help it with your business? And that's a great point, Courtney. Like, just pop it in a chat GPT and it'll help you. At least like try to figure out where to even start. So I know we covered a lot, and anyone that has some questions for the panel, drop them in. But as we talk about like, what can you take away from this webinar? And when it comes to KPIs and understanding the numbers that you should be looking at, we have 2 opportunities for you. Better Who was kind enough to share their workshop coming up. Knowing your numbers, it's coming up July 9th, so feel free to grab grab the QR code to register for that. But also, Property Meld does have a guide to advanced maintenance tracking. Scan that too. Both super beneficial for you as you take away some Actionable. And thank you. Also, the workshop is in the chat. But also, just some housekeeping things as people drop in their questions. MX Summit is coming up September 16th through the 18th, talking all about maintenance, KPIs, all the things. So if you would like to learn more about that, I'm going to drop that in the chat as well. I don't know, Courtney, I know you're not coming, but we would love to see you. Jay, I don't know if you're coming either, but definitely something you should consider too.
I'll do the plug for the MX Summit because we happen to get 2 people on the webinar who are not coming, and I don't know how that's possible. Jay said he's coming. I don't know. It's in it's California. It's not very far from California to South Dakota. They're next door states.
Yeah, I'll be in South Dakota 3 other times this year. So,
Dude, you got to do that. All right. So I will tell you, every year we have doubled. Last year we had 400 attendees of the Maintenance Summit. I'll tell you, it's really, a lot of people go, who's this for? This is great for executives, like high levels. We have people that manage over 40,000 incomes, all the way to broker owners that are 150 units that are kind of just, maybe they acquired the first company. And we have those executives or even remote team members. I think this last year we set a record for how many people were from internationally coming. And so really there's kind of 2 general tracks. It's like, where's the industry headed? Everybody needs to know. Jay, you had mentioned AI, like it is a big deal. Like, and how do businesses need to lean in and do some different things, specifically when it comes to maintenance? And that's important for the executives to hear and team members who are leading their organizations. And then 2, we got a lot of certification. So we talk about process a lot in this thing. Is basically how can people execute maintenance on the ground better and even gain certification. So it's really a duality. There is a real rodeo. We're actually hosting a rodeo. Now, I grew up with them. I don't get why we're doing it, but apparently everyone else in the country is like, dude, rodeos are awesome. There is real rodeo happening. We're paying real prize money for them to basically compete in front of people who love maintenance, which is the most weird thing ever, but it is going to be pretty dope. And then we got David Meltzer coming again, who was phenomenal, doing a workshop. And then, of course, one of the great headline speakers is Sharon Lechter, who was the co-author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is what a lot of us in the industry got kind of hooked on real estate investment in the long term. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know if we're going to double this year, Liz, because going from 400 to 800 is just kind of getting stupid. But I wouldn't doubt there's around 600 attendees coming. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, do get it. It covers, it's actually relatively low cost to fly. The hotel, we got an insane deal. And then we also cover all food and entertainment. So it's probably some of the lowest cost of investment in the company. So anyways.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for wrapping that up in a bow. Also, if you are a Property Meld user, Better Who is in Services Nexus. Definitely check it out. If you are not a Property Meld user, you can also just scan that QR code. I'll pop it up here again, and we will make sure that you get connected on Nexus as well. But yeah, if we don't have any other questions, Courtney, thank you again so much for joining this Ray and Jay crew. But until next time, we will see you all later. Thank you.
Thanks for coming by, guys.